Welcome back, in part 3 of Ford. Anyways, let's continue about Ford. Ford established a manufacturing facility in the port city of Yokohama in February 1925, where Model T vehicles were assembled using imported knockdown kits.
Whoa!
The factory subsequently produced 10,000 Model A's up to 1936.
Production ceased in 1940 as a result of political tensions between Japan and the United States. After World War II, Ford did not have a presence in Japan, as the Ford facility was appropriated by the Japanese government until 1958 when property was returned as a possession of the Ford Motor Company and became a research and development location for Ford partner Mazda.
In 1979, Ford acquired a 24.5% ownership stake in Mazda, and in 1982, Ford and Mazda jointly established a sales channel to sell Ford products in Japan, and including vehicles manufactured in North America at a dealership called Autorama, Japanese.
The Autorama sales channel was renamed Ford Sales of Japan in 1997. Vehicles sold at Autorama locations were the North American assembled Ford Explorer, Probe, 1989 to 1998, Mustang, Taurus, 1989 to 1997. Thunderbird, 1990 to 1993, Lincoln Continental, and Lincoln LS.
Ford products manufactured in Europe that were sold in Japan were the Ford Mondeo, Ka, Focus, Focus C-Max, Fiesta, and the Galaxy.
Mazda manufactured Ford vehicles in Japan and sold them at Ford's at the Autorama locations.
They were the Ford Telstar, Mazda Capella, Laser, Festiva Mini Wagon, Ixon, Mazda Premacy, Frida, Mazda Hongo 3D, Spectron, Mazda Hongo, and commercial trucks J80 and the J100, Mazda Hongo truck.
Ford increased its shareholding in Mazda to 33.4% in 1996, but as of July 2016, it is listed at 11%.
Ford did sell a small range of vehicles in Japan. As of October 2010, the Ford Mustang, Escape, Explorer, and Explorer pickup truck, Ford Kuga, Lincoln Navigator, Lincoln MKX, and more recently, the Ford EcoSport were available in Japan.
As of February 2016, Ford no longer maintains a regional office in Minato, Tokyo, Japan, and sales of new cars in Japan have ended. Ford Motor Company of Japan Limited was the Japanese subsidiary of the United States-based automaker Ford Motor Company. Since 1917, the first Ford vehicles were sold by Sales and Freightar in Japan, but without trying to build a dealer network.
Whoa!
Although the sales department of Ford Japan, considered in 1922 due to the inadequate infrastructure as unsuitable for automobiles, was recognized as part of an Asian trip by the Ford export manager Russell One.
Rather the potential of the Japanese market. Ford founded a subsidiary in 1925 in Yokohama.
From 1925 to 1935, the Japanese car market was dominated by American manufacturers. Alongside Ford, since 1926/27 General Motors, and since 1930 also Chrysler.
In 1930, the combined market share of Ford and General Motors was 95%.
In addition to a new law in 1936, according to which existing foreign companies were not allowed to increase their annual production, Further economic and political factors led to Ford, like other American manufacturers, virtually withdrawing from the Japanese market in 1939.
The Ford brand was formally dissolved in 1941 after the mutual declaration of war by the Japanese government.
All attempts to resume operations after the Second World War ended initially failed.
Agreements with Nissan or Toyota could not be concluded. Also, sale of the plots failed. Ford resumed importing cars to Japan in 1974.
In addition, vehicles manufactured by Mazda and branded Badge Engineering have been sold with a Ford logo.
At least in the mid-1980s, this approach was a USP for American automotive brands in Japan.
A source lists Ford as a manufacturer, but refers to the headquarters of Mazda.
In January 2016, Ford Motor Company announced that it would exit from the Japanese and Indonesian markets at the end of the year because the manufacturer did not consider these sales regions profitable for the foreseeable future. For their imported cars, Ford had mainly offered models with left-hand drive in Japan, one notable exception being the third-generation Ford Taurus.
Some of the models sold, such as the Ford Escape, were made by Ford Leo Home Motor in Taiwan.
In Australia and New Zealand, the popular Ford Falcon 1960 to 2016 had long been considered the average family car and is considerably larger than the Mondeo, Ford's largest car sold in Europe.
Between 1960 and 1972, the Falcon was based on a U.S. model of the same name, but since then has been entirely designed and manufactured in Australia until 2016, occasionally being manufactured in New Zealand.
Like its General Motors rival, the Holden Commodore, the Falcon used a rear-wheel drive layout.
High-performance variants of the Falcon running locally built engines produce up to 362 horsepower, 270 kilowatts.
A ute, short for utility, known in the US as pickup truck, version is also available with the same range of drivetrains.
In addition, Ford Australia sold highly tuned limited production Falcon sedans and utes through its performance car division, Ford Performance Vehicles, until it closed in 2014.
In Australia, the Commodore and Falcon have traditionally outsold all other cars and constituted over 20% of the new car market.
In New Zealand, Ford was second in market share in the first 8 months of 2006 with 14.4%.
More recently, Ford has axed its Falcon-based LWB variant of its lineup, the Fairlane and LTD ranges.
Ford discontinued the Fairlane in 2007 and LTD in 2008.
Ford had announced that their Geelong engine manufacturing plant would be shut down between 2013 and 2016.
They had earlier announced local manufacturing of the Focus small car starting from 2011, but instead decided to import the model from Ford's plant in Thailand.
In Australia, the Laser was one of Ford Australia's most successful models and was manufactured in Ford's Homebush West plant from 1981 until the plant's closure in September 1994.
It outsold the Mazda 323, despite being almost identical to it because the Laser was manufactured in Australia and Ford was perceived as a local brand.
According to research carried out by Ford Australia in 1984, a third of Laser buyers were unaware that the Ford model was based on the Mazda 323. In New Zealand, the Ford Laser and Telstar were assembled alongside the Mazda 323 and 626 until 1997 at the Vehicle Assemblers of New Zealand, Vans, Clinton Weary, Auckland.
The Sierra wagon was also assembled in New Zealand owing to the popularity of station wagons in that market.
The scheduled closure of Ford's Australian manufacturing base in 2016 was confirmed on May 23, 2015.
Headquartered in the Victorian suburb of Broadmeadows, the company had registered losses worth 600 million Australian dollars over the 5 years prior to the announcement.
It was noted that the corporate fleet and government sales that account for 2/3 of large, local car sales in Australia are insufficient to keep Ford's products profitable and viable in Australia.
The decision affected 1,200 Ford workers, over 600 employees in Geelong and more than 500 in Broadmeadows, who lost their jobs by October 2016.
The closure of Ford's plants in Norland, Geelong and Broadmeadows, Melbourne occurred on October 7, 2016. We will continue about Ford in Part 4. To be continued.